What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Beyond the Junkyard podcast. I am Junkyard James, and with me, he had some technical difficulties earlier tonight, but we're going to make it work any way that we can. Kody Marinara, how are you doing, my friend?
Already, the sauce is extra sour tonight. It's not going well. It's not going well. I hate my laptop. I hate internet shit. We fired up. This is gonna be a fired up person tonight. So,
it's gonna be fun.
doing budget phenomenal, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, my friend. We're coming off a very good episode of AEW Dynamite, which was coming off of what I thought was a really, really solid pay-per-view with AEW Revolution. We'll get to that here in a moment. We got some sponsors that we got, or affiliates that we got to talk about real quick. And then I told you offline, I have an opening monologue for you, and I'm starting to think, with as fired up as you are, if it's a good idea, if I should do this or not. But I think I'm still going to do it. But anyways, here we go. W.GG. Use the code Beyond the Yard. Save 10% off of your order there. Get that energy mix there, and help this up-and-coming energy brand try and break through the barrier of big energy. That's W.GG. Code Beyond the Yard at checkout. WWE shop. Use the link in the description. Snag that new Cody Rhodes merch. John Cena has a bunch of new t-shirts coming out. Snag that in the WWE shop. And then StubHub, last but certainly not least, link in the description to get all of your sporting event ticketing needs for your area. Let's get going. Listen, before I show this opening monologue, I got to say, we got to plug it. You did your first ever solo episode yesterday. Let that marinate. You'll be doing those from every now and again. And so I appreciate the content, sir. Everybody tune in. If you want to get a 10 or 2 minute recap of what the show is on, and lead people to go there and watch it.
Yeah. I thought it went pretty well. It wasn't too long of an episode. I was really worried that I was going to go on forever, and I'm glad I didn't. Really, I just gave my overall quick thoughts on the match card selection for Revolution that took place this past Sunday. I thought that, and we'll kind of get into a little bit more here tonight and then give my overall general thoughts of the show, but I seriously thought Mariah May and Toni Storm should have been, at the very least, co-main event, but they were not. They were fifth on the card of an 8-match card. And that really, really irked me with the booking of that. I felt they should have been co-main at the very least. And the way the match played out and everything that came about it, talk about that. And what's up with the title changes on free television in the year 2025? We're not even 3 full months into it, and we got so many title changes that have occurred on free television on the weekly shows. I think we need to taper that down a little bit, obviously with things like injuries and whatnot. That happens, and you may need to get a title off of a person much sooner than you probably want to, and that's understandable. But just in general, I just feel there is a ton of title changes that have taken place here on free television in the year 2025 to begin the new year. But yeah, talk about that and just get my general thoughts on that. But thought it was a pretty good show overall. Definitely take a listen to it if y'all have a free about 30 minutes or so. And anytime there's really maybe something going on that may be big or leading up to something big or something I just feel I need to just let loose and let that shit marinate, we're gonna stir up the pot for sure. So yeah, definitely stay tuned for future episodes that will be coming to the channel.
Absolutely, I appreciate it. And so here comes this opening monologue. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a special day, a special occasion. We have to pop. I'll say pop the champagne. I got a monster from work. And celebrate because 14 years ago on this day, 14 years ago, the most gloriously unhinged 90 seconds in wrestling history. Take a look. 14 years, everybody, since that miraculous day at Victory Road in TNA. 1,100 people in the crowd in Orlando, Florida. It's a special moment. What are your thoughts on this special occasion?
I hate you. I hate you. I hate everybody that has anything to do with that. That was not a good night. That was not a good night. And yet somehow TNA is still alive. I don't know how that didn't kill the company right then and there. I mean, the only good thing about it is that my dude walked out on top forcefully, but he did. Yeah. I hate that show. I hate that moment. I hate everything about it. It's y'all bastards have every intent on making my life miserable with that event and with that match. And I swear to God, it comes up almost every other week. I don't know how, but it does. I hate it. I don't understand it. I hate it. But you know what? I think everybody turned out okay after that. Well, some people. Most people did.
Absolutely. Hey, let's get into some actual wrestling content. What do you say about that? Here we go. Let's start with AEW Revolution, the highs, the lows, the everything in between. And I'll start off with a couple highs that I had, and then I'll let you talk about your stuff, and then I'll end it with a rant towards Tony Khan for a minute. Some highs. I think the Mariah May and Tony Storm match was great. I was not a fan of its placement on the card, exactly as you were saying. I thought this should have been the main event. But the match in and of itself was so encapsulating for the 13 and a half minutes or so that they were wrestling. Every second of that match meant something, and you had to stay tuned to watch it. I thought, man, they had a solid hour and a half of, or maybe hour of wrestling between Tony Storm and Mariah May, and then they went Kenny Omega and Takeshita, and then they went Ospreay and Fletcher back to back to back. But even then, before that, can we put some respect on Mercedes Moné's name? I thought she did really well with Momo Watanabe. I thought there were two matches on this entire card that were terrible. The main event being the one of them, and then the tag match I wasn't a big fan of. And I get the Outrunners were kind of like the fan favorite there, but I wasn't a big fan of the match. I don't think the styles of the Hurt Syndicate and the Outrunners kind of meshed, and so I'm interested to see where that tag scene goes. But my big takeaway is I was, at least in my opinion, I was correct. Ospreay and Fletcher had match of the night. It's the only match I would give above a 5-star. I gave it 6 stars in my my ranking system. I don't really have any criteria. It's just it was the best match of the night, and Ospreay put a good promo on Dynamite about it too. So we'll talk about that promo maybe in a little bit. It was just a really good show. I'll get to my lows here in a minute, but what are some of your highs and lows for Revolution?
I thought the MJF Hangman Page match to kick off the pay-per-view was a really good way to start. I thought it was a really good match. MJF taking a clean pinfall loss on pay-per-view was something I wasn't expecting, but Hey, it only took 15 times for me to pick Hangman Page to win on pay-per-view, and damn it, if I wasn't, I threatened him and I said, if you don't win, I ain't picking you no more on pay-per-view, and well, Cowboy shit, he came through. So I thought that was a great way to kick off the show. Kenny versus Takeshita, great match. Cage match was phenomenal. And while the main event may have not lived up to most people's expectations or the match's expectations, I thought AEW had a really great way to end the pay-per-view on a high note. But obviously Swerve kind of doing the stomp from basically the top of the bleachers to Moxley on the floor. Those are my highs. If I would give any lows, I think that the tag team match was a little lackluster, but the match was a little lackluster. But I'm very, very, very much in support of the Hurt Syndicate being this dominant tag team, this really, really strongly booked tag team and faction. I'm really, really happy about that. Just the match itself. I mean, maybe because of the way that they're being booked, it may have not needed to be that kind of a match that it's going to be the knock your socks off 5-star classic, which is okay. Not every match needs to be that way. But just kind of a little bit of a low point. And then again, just the match card selection. Tony Storm Mirai should have went on last or second to last. I felt like the match was kind of rushed. It seemed like it was kind of rushed with some of the spots that they did with kind of in succession, with rapid succession. I thought that the match deserved 30 to 35 minutes just to let that stuff breathe, let those spots have those big spot moments, let the crowd sink it in, and just they could have told a much deeper story with that match if they'd given the allotment time for it. But besides that, a little bit of the hiccup there at the beginning of the show. I'm not sure what the issue was with the feed on Triller TV. I do know the LA area had an earthquake. I don't know if it was Sunday night. Maybe that had something to do with it. I don't know. But a little bit of a hiccup there in the beginning, first 5 minutes of the show. And then after that little glitch with the MJF and Hangman entrances, it was fine for me the rest of the show. So whatever issues they originally had, they got fixed. So that was great. There's a little bit of a low spot, but I'm going to wait until we kind of dive a little bit more into that match, unless we want to say it here. But it has to do with the Ospreay and Fletcher match that I have myself scratching my head with. But if we're going to dive a little more into that match a little bit later in the show, I'll save that for a little bit later.
Yeah. I want to mention that match kind of in its kind of separate, make it separate, because I do got a question for you on it. But let's talk about Swerve and Ricochet for a minute. I thought their match was good. Not a 5-star classic, but like you said, not every match has to be 5-star classics. It did the job. Ricochet, I really enjoy his work as a heel, and it just goes to show if you allow someone the time to put together a character and a gimmick. I kind of the Prince Nana walk off part there kind of was like, oh no, are they really going to move him from Swerve? Like what's that was kind of unpredictable there, but and obviously Nana is it's kind of like a ruse or whatever, and came back and helped Swerve capture the victory there. But yeah, my biggest low is the match card. And you talked about the glitch. That was kind of annoying. But technology happens. We started 10 minutes late tonight, so we understand. But the match card selection, I'm not necessarily upset that Tony Storm and Mariah I would have put them as the main event. I think they deserve the main event, but I wouldn't have been upset if they were second to last or co-main or whatever you want to call it. But to put them on like fourth to last, that is, in my opinion, unexcusable use of your time, because you have this match and what it's meant to be is the Hollywood ending, one of the last things that people are supposed to see. And how in the world are you going to remember this match and the great visual that it provided us when the match after it's Kenny Omega and Takeshita, and you know they're going to go all out and give a really great match. And I thought it was as Kenny Omega and Takeshita was as close to a 5-star as you could get, with maybe not being a 5-star in and of itself. And then the match after it is Ospreay and Fletcher. And so you have two really big matches that are going to get time. I thought the Omega match went longer than it maybe could have, and some of that time could have been given to Toni Storm and Mariah May. And I just question the idea, because it went like MJF and Hangman started the show, and the start of the show was good, and then I think it was Swerve and Ricochet after that, and then you get Momo and Mercedes, kind of a piss break tag match, and then a women's match again, and then you end the show with 3 men's matches. I feel you could have separated the women's matches and put on Mariah and Toni Storm just a little bit later in the card, and kind of separate those two big matches between Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay, even if it went on third to last and not fifth to last or whatever it was. Like, I just think they could have made it a bigger moment, because it kind of got overshadowed by some of the bigger pieces that happened. And then, especially after watching that main event, I'm sorry, I'm just going to go straight up, and that main event was just it was ass, like straight up booty cheeks. I can't defend the booking. It was terrible, and I get, okay, we get to the point here to where Christian Cage, he cashes in. Okay, great. Everybody kind of saw that coming, but the fact that it was really kind of for naught, like it almost. And then I read all the dirt sheets, and it sounded like it was kind of like we have no plans for Christian to ever cash in on this thing, so let's just get rid of it. It's kind of their mindset. It was a last minute addition to the card. Just not a great decision, and I don't know if maybe plans changed with Christian Cage, or plans changed with the title picture, and they decided to put the belt back on Swerve, and they don't want Christian to cash in on Swerve, so let's just get rid of it. Or maybe that, people were starting to complain about him never cashing again, so let's just get rid of it, kind of thing. I don't know really what the thought process was. Just the match in general was bland, and I hate to use this example, but to me, it felt so much like a textbook bloodline match in the WWE, where it was slow and the crowd wasn't really into it, and they're starting to get this build up, and then you get this big ref bump, and then stuff happens, and then at the end of the day, the heel still wins, and it felt almost like a bloodline match. And I can't. I hate the bloodline storyline, because the match types are always the same, and you can kind of predict how the story goes, and it felt so much like a bloodline match to me. But I don't know. And then we get the news yesterday that they're running it back part 2 for the belt on Dynamite next week. And I don't get it. I don't understand. The fans hated it. Let's run it back, and maybe they like it the second time. I don't know what they're thinking there. Maybe there's a bigger plan in sight with these title matches. Maybe it helps introduce the feud with Moxley and Swerve a little bit more. I'll give it, the time that it's going to have on the card. Street fight, so Moxley's going to bleed a lot. Copeland's probably going to bleed a lot. That's what you're going to come to expect in that match next week on Dynamite. But yeah, I wasn't a big fan of that match. The main event, it kind of spoiled. Like, I would have given the show 10 out of 10. 5-star pay-per-view, maybe one of AEW's best pay-per-views they ever put on. But I don't know if I can, because of just how spoiled the ending of the show was. And I know the fans, I guess, technically left happy because Swerve came out and played Batman and jumped off the the staircase there, and your super baby face is the last thing you see. But I think the stench of how terrible that match was before that point just kind of made everybody kind of disappointed in how bad that match was. I saw a lot of people hating on the segment, and AEW fans are pretty loyal to a fault on their, even if a match was terrible, they'll still defend it. They were not defending this match, and so that says something about it. And so, any last words on Revolution before we move over before we move on to talk about the ladder match?
I was trying to defend that match with Cope and Mox. Two veteran guys came from the WWE sphere, more so Cope than Mox. Thought maybe he was just, their mindset was, obviously they're not going to put on the same kind of style match that Fletcher and Ospreay did, and Omega and Takeshita, or even Mariah and Tony. They weren't going to give you that high-flying, intense action, fast-paced match. They were going to slow it down a little bit and just kind of use their decade-long experience in the industry to kind of build up the match, let the audience kind of breathe a little bit after those crazy matches, and then build it up towards the end where maybe a little more action-packed, a little more things are going on, and the crowd gets more into it. That really kind of didn't happen. Maybe the crowd got burned out at the end, or just in general the match just wasn't that good. I'm not 100% sure what happened there with that. I think maybe that was maybe their goal was, obviously we're not going to be able to put on that kind of show that the previous 3 to 4 matches before the main event did. Let's start slow. Let's build up the crowd, build up the intensity, and wait till we get to the ending, and then we'll hook them and we'll be good. And it just never really kind of happened. Match was kind of awkwardly paced, had some awkward just setups with it, and just kind of fell flat. Obviously, the Christian run-in got the crowd going, got the intensity up, and I was not shocked that Christian took the fall in a way to protect the Cope a little bit, but just an interesting setup for that. And, of course, Christian comes in. I thought AEW did a pretty good job Dynamite last night with some of these backstage vignettes and building, obviously, towards not only Dynasty, but for future things in the long run as well. And still gave us some things to chomp our bits at for upcoming shows, not only for Dynamite, but Collision, and obviously the next pay-per-view of Dynasty. So I thought overall the show top to bottom was very good, very well built, very good storylines going into it. The main event didn't put a sour taste in my mouth by any means, but obviously just felt a little bit flat for what I think we expected the match could be. Hopefully they make up for it next week. I don't know. Not sure what's going to happen there, but it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen next week with that rematch for the world title.
Yeah, absolutely. And so last final, I guess, question. As we talk about Revolution and then move into Dynamite last night. So we go to this ladder match, and very good match. And I think it's the best ladder match that AEW has put on. I'm not willing to say it's the best ladder match of all time. I think it's still hard to beat that AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, and was it Eric Young? I can't remember. The one in TNA, the ladder match. Or, I'm sorry, steel cage match. I don't know why I keep saying ladder match.
You said ladder, and I'm thinking, what the hell? What ladder match took place between Revolution and... Did I miss something on Dynamite? What?
I'm sorry.
What ladder match are you talking about here?
It's been a long day, and my mind glitched for a minute. Steel cage match. Best steel cage match that AEW's put on. I'm not willing to say it's better than AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, and you got to give me the third guy.
I don't know if AJ, Joe, and Daniels had a steel cage match. I know that was their triple threat at Unbreakable. Trying to think of what steel cage match you're thinking of, unless they had one a little bit later on in TNA, and I just don't remember it off the top of my head, and that could very well have happened. But I think I know what you mean. I just have to go back and kind of look at it up. I feel like Joe Daniels and AJ had a steel cage match maybe in 2010, 2009, 2011, 12, something like that. But again, I could be wrong. But definitely there's been a lot of great steel cage matches for sure. Some that come to mind for sure for me, the tag team match between Triple X, Elix Skipper, and I believe it was Senshi or Low Key versus America's Most Wanted at Turning Point 04, where Elix had that walk the cage and did the Hurricane Run off the top of the cage to Chris Harris. That was wild. That was an intense match. AEW even had a great tag team steel cage match with the Bucks and Lucha Bros at All Out 2022, 2021. And obviously WWE's had its fair share of great cage matches. I think of Benoit and Kurt Angle. I think that WWE has had a lot of them, so you really have to kind of go back in the archives and decipher from an Elimination Chamber, Steel Cage, Hell in a Cell. They can all kind of float together a little bit sometimes, but been a lot for sure over the years. But no, I think Ospreay and Fletcher definitely on top 5 for sure of just overall really good matches in the Steel Cage match history.
Absolutely. And so, I'm trying to look it up because I remember when Drew McIntyre and CM Punk had that match last.
That was a Hell in a Cell, though, wasn't it?
Summer. It was.
Okay.
But they were saying it was like the best cage match they've ever seen, and there was one match that everybody said was better than it, and I can't remember it off the top of my head, and I agreed with them. It's not coming to mind, but anyways, yeah, you said you had a point about the match that you wanted to make about this steel cage.
Yeah, I thought that the match overall was just really good. Crazy spots, obviously, but just really great pace, and those two delivered a great match. You know, had some different ebbs and flows with it, with Mark Davis obviously coming down and getting involved with it, the barbed wire bat, the crazy spots, them starting on top of the cage with the kind of the show off and the pose down was pretty good. But the one spot that just has my head scratching and I didn't love was, so Ospreay does the Spanish fly off the top, which I don't think I've ever seen that before, so that was pretty crazy. I felt the commentary on that was kind of lackluster for that spot. I know that it probably took their breath away, and they probably just, you know, the biggest thing is you want to make sure both guys are okay, because that's a pretty wild spot. But you know, sometimes commentary can just want to let things breathe before they just, you know, go crazy with it, and that's totally fine too. But not even a minute later, Fletcher gets right back up and is like, you know, I hate you, I effing hate you, F you, this and that. And that's when obviously I think Ospreay did the hidden blade and got the 1, 2, 3. I didn't like how quickly Kyle got right back up. That's a top of the cage spot. You need to sell the shit out of that. Both men need to sell the shit out of that. Sell it for, I don't even care. I don't care if you guys are going over in the match time. I don't care. Sell it a little bit more. That's a top rope spot, and I'm not gonna lie, I didn't watch Raw, so I didn't watch Punk versus Seth. I know that the spot was it Seth doing or was it Punk doing the suplex to Seth from the top of the cage? I know that was a spot. I just don't remember who was doing it to what. And of course, people are bitching at that. Well, Ospreay and Fletcher, they did it from the actual top, and Rollins or whomever was just kind of leaning over the top. It's still a top of the cage spot. Still a lot of impact. Still a lot of danger and risk involved. So I'm not going to say that one sucks and one's great. They're both dangerous spots. But I would imagine, again, I didn't watch Raw, but I'm going to imagine that whoever took the bump from the top, if that wasn't the end of the match, that at least they sold it a little bit longer than probably 20 seconds, I would hope. But yeah, besides that spot kind of just irritated me a little bit with like, holy hell, we guys are beating the shit out of each other, this and that. Big ass spot that just happened there, and 20 seconds later, hey, let's get right back up and yell expletives at you, and then they get hidden blade and 1, 2, 3. Like, didn't love that. That cell could have lasted a little bit longer to eventually set up maybe for a hidden blade, but I don't care what the time constraints are. Let that thing breathe for a little bit, and then go into the finish. So that was kind of my biggest thing that just kind of irritated me a little bit with it.
Yeah, and I can understand that, and there's a little critique again on Dynamite about the lack of selling that our boy who just debuted yesterday. I'm having
Mike Bailey.
Mike Bailey. That he had some issues selling last night. I don't know what's going on with my head. I'm just not being able to put complete thoughts together right now. But Mike Bailey, that he had issues selling. And I'm still trying to figure out what cage match that I was thinking about. But anyways, we'll move on. I actually, now that I think about it, that Lucha Bros Young Bucks match might be the best cage match that AEW has ever done. Though Ospreay and Fletcher certainly can play neck and neck there. I do want to make one last point about the cage matches. There's a lot of people that were like, "So see, Punk and Seth did a cage match and they didn't have to bleed all over the place and this, that, and the other, and that you don't have to bleed in cage matches." And I get that Punk and Drew were in a Hell in a Cell and it was that bad blood, but Drew McIntyre bled so damn much in that match, if you don't remember. And everyone said it was the best match of the year and the best feud of the year, and there was a lot of blood. And so I don't know. That's a bit of a weird hypocritical moment for me. We're swapping. There we go. Okay, he's maybe back. I don't know.
God, we've got it to work. Okay.
All right, let's jump into the highs and the lows of AEW Dynamite. The first Dynamite after Revolution. I thought this was a pretty good paced show. I know a lot of people weren't big fans of it. I'm going to go off the bat and say the biggest high for me was Megan Bayne. She comes out and she destroys Toni Storm at the beginning of at the end of her promo, and then everyone's confused. Oh, I thought Megan Bayne was not, she was feuding with Penelope Ford, and in all of that story with Thunder Rosa and Chris Statlander and all that, why is she just in this feud? Well, it's because it's Megan Bayne, and she isn't locked into anything. She's going for that number one spot. She's there to win a title, and she will take no prisoners because we see her later in the show come and help Penelope Ford as well, which to me gives one thing. Characters in AEW are not locked into one singular story. They're allowed to kind of expand their reach from one story to the next and kind of play a piece in multiple stories. I think that gives the characters a very human-esque kind of realistic feel. It's not like, well, you're locked to these 20 minutes. If you're, interlocking into multiple different feuds and multiple different pieces of stories at the same time, call them side quests or whatever you want to say. We saw it with MJF as well, where MVP comes out, has his feud with him, his little promo battle with MJF, tries to get him to join the Hurt Syndicate, but then MJF is then having promo battles with Adam Hangman Page in the back as well. I just love the complexity of how each character in AEW, they're not so simple as to be locked into one story at a time, that they can kind of go from one story to the next and kind of intermingle within stories. It just you don't see that in every wrestling promotion, so that's a big thing for me. But I think Megan Bayne is the star of that women's division now. Move over, Britt Baker. You've been replaced. It's Megan Bayne, and Toni Storm and Mariah May, the top 3 ladies in that division. Tony Khan, I meant to say this earlier, but Tony Khan, if you want to be different than WWE and TNA and all the other wrestling brands, the reason the main event should have been Toni Storm and Mariah May is because you should focus the majority of your time on your women's roster. If given the time, I think is the best women's roster in all of pro wrestling. They're just not given the time to prove themselves. But look, I petitioned for the women to get more time, and they had more time, and they're deemed more important. But now I'm petitioning to make them the most important thing in your show, even more than, at least right now, this dumbass story before the world title. Toni Storm should have more television time than Jon Moxley, in my opinion. Anyways, your highs and your lows on Dynamite.
I'm enjoying this MJF Adam Page, wherever it's leading to, wherever it's going. Obviously, they have the rub backstage and the MVP situation. That's an interesting little twist into what could be coming up. So I enjoyed that whole segment. Yeah, Tony Khan is definitely setting up Megan Bayne to be the next big thing in the women's division for sure. I think maybe she's going to be the one to dethrone Toni Storm for the world title eventually. Her kind of being intertwined into 2 different kind of feuds is a little interesting. Still has some unfinished business with Chris Statlander, maybe Willow, but implementing herself into the AEW world title, women's world title scene is very, very interesting. In a way, I kind of hope they don't jump the gun too soon on it, because I think we still need to kind of get over that feud with her and Statlander and or Willow. Let's finish that up first. Maybe make that something of a number 1 contendership type of thing, or hell, even let Megan not yet go for the world title, and let's have her enter the Owen Hart Women's Cup and have her face Toni Storm at All In Texas or something like that. So I really enjoyed that. Really enjoyed Osprey's promo. Already kind of setting his sights on All In Texas, wanting to main event the biggest show of the year. And already inserting himself into being in the Owen Hart Cup, which is great. One thing that I do enjoy, and I like it, but I don't want to convolute it again, is the amount of people that are wanting to vie for the AEW World Title, which to me, that's what the big men single stars should be eyeing towards, is wanting to be the world champion. However, we had the same situation happen at the end of last year, and it just really convoluted the entirety of the men's storylines, and it really made it for confusing TV. The 4-way at World's End was weird. So I'm hoping we don't get into that cluster again. And I'll be 100% honest with you. Moxley needs to keep this title until All In Texas. And I know that's another 4 months away, but I'm telling you, I Swerve and Osprey can sell tickets. Swerve and Hangman can sell tickets. MJF and Osprey, Hangman and Osprey, Swerve and Osprey, they can all sell tickets for All In. But I think if you just really build up Moxley as this almost unbeatable type of character, as this just heel that everybody hates, let your biggest babyface in AEW, which is arguably Osprey and Omega right now, one of those 2 vie for the world title at All In Texas, and let's go for the world title, and that'd be the crowning moment to get rid of the world title off the Death Riders and from Moxley. But I like how we're still implementing OJ White into this whole thing. I am interested to see where the tag team division goes next, especially now that MVP is kind of implementing himself with MJF. That's going to be interesting. I feel like the AEW World Trios titles has fallen off the face of the earth. I couldn't even tell you the last time that Pat, Claudio, and Yuta even defended the damn things or even showed it on television. So we got to do something with that pretty damn soon.
I think it was they fought.
I think it was a collision, wasn't it, a few weeks ago?
Daniel Garcia, Cool Ange, and Daddy Magic. Was that what it was? Was that for the belt? And what's crazy is you have the Ops. They could start a feud for the trios belt. And I guess they got to sell the injuries with Copeland taking out all of these members of the Death Riders. But yeah, like we need to get that trio belt, either get rid of it in its entirety and retire it, or put it back on TV and get it juiced up again.
Yeah, I mean, you got the Undisputed Kingdom with Cole, Strong, Kyle O'Reilly, the Ops. So, I mean, there's still a couple of different trios you could implement into there. The MXM collection, if you're going to include MXM and Johnny TV. Garcia, Daddy Magic, and Cool Hand Ange. I mean, there's a few different things we can do with this, but like you said, either get rid of the damn title as a whole, or if you're going to make it a champion, put it on TV and give it some TV time. At this point, I wouldn't care if Tony Khan was like, hey, listen, I don't care if your two dudes are out. Wheeler Yuta, you are a trios champion. You got to defend this title. I don't care if it's by yourself or if you find two schmucks and they're partners. You need to defend this title. That'd be interesting. That'd be kind of compelling, and that'd be a way to get the trios titles off of them and put on somebody else, and let's go. But yeah, trying to think of any real lows from last night. What was the match last night? The main event, was it?
It was Orange Cassidy and Hechicero. Yep.
Didn't love the match.
Yeah, I was not a fan of. If I was Tony Khan, I would have swapped the placement of the two tournament matches and have Mike Bailey's debut be the main event. Like, oh, we're waiting all night to figure out who is this wild card, and it'd be Mike Bailey. That match was the better of the two matches. But yeah, I don't know if there was really a low. I'll be honest with you, I paid no attention to the Hobbs match, Powerhouse Hobbs match. I was kind of in and out of sleep, to be completely honest. For that match, I don't even remember it playing. So I can't say if that was a high or a low, but the rest of the show was really good. There were two segments I guess I want to break down. The first being, we'll talk about Mike Bailey at the end and his debut and who I guess we can talk about who do we think wins this 4-way match next week. But let's talk about the Christian Cage segment, because Nick Wayne stepped up to the patriarch and got put in his place. Christian Cage is the patriarchy turning on him. And so I said it last week, I believe, in my wild theory, if Christian were to cash in, that Luchasaurus was going to turn on him. Well, Luchasaurus was backstage, according to reports, at Revolution. And so I think this turn is coming. But I love this character development with Nick Wayne. I think it makes this story a little compelling. Because let's just be honest, the patriarchy's kind of gotten a little stale. And now you have a little bit of dissension of like, it's kind of back to the beginning where Mother Wayne either has to kind of take her son's side or stay with Christian Cage. And Nick Wayne, like he was propped up by Darby Allin and Swerve Strickland as like this next big thing in AEW. And to be honest, he hasn't been much of anything in AEW. I think this is an opportunity to make Nick Wayne a superstar Christian Cage is going to put him over at the end pretty well, I think, like he did with Jack Perry. And was it Hook just recently that he put over? So this is a good spot, and I think Nick Wayne could look really good with that Christian rub. But it was just interesting. I did not expect it to happen on the show yesterday, and it kind of piqued my interest a little bit. Your thoughts on the Nick Wayne spot?
Yeah, I mean, we have to first remember what Nick Wayne is, 20, something like that.
Yeah.
Dude's got a lot of years to go, and he's still very, very green and new to this industry as a whole. So I'm not too concerned with him losing a little bit of, steam, trying to figure out his character development, this and that. Dude's plenty young, very good in the ring. Got to get a little bit better on the mic, but obviously we need to develop some sort of character and gimmick around him. That'll come within time, but this is kind of a kickstart for that. The whole Kip Sabian thing is kind of weird just because he's just there. He just is there.
Yeah.
He doesn't really add much to it besides he's there. So it'd be interesting to kind of see how that whole dynamic takes shape with not only Nick and Christian, but Kip Sabian and Christian. I felt Mother Wayne could have probably said something a little bit more, and I understand that, she's not a natural on promos and this and that, and I totally understand that, but I thought that she was starting to come into her own and get a little bit more of a rhythm almost every week for a period of time that she was talking. It seemed like she was getting more and more comfortable, and then she hasn't really done much of that here in the last little bit. So, but it's setting up for a very interesting peak in that storyline. Is Nick going to turn on Christian? Is he still going to be under Christian's wings? Luchasaurus going to be involved in all this?
I just wonder if the idea is somewhat similar to what they did with Mariah May, using the Owen to kind of push her feud with Toni Storm in its original inception. Like, what if both Nick Wayne and Christian Cage are in the Owen Hart tournament? Maybe they meet up at a point in time, and Nick Wayne doesn't just lay down for Christian like Luchasaurus has done in the past, and maybe that can start the feud there. I like, and kind of on an off topic for a minute here, I love how they're talking about matches for Double or Nothing, and go ahead and already mentioning, hey, this Owen Hart tournament's coming up, and the winner of this tournament gets a title opportunity, most likely at All In, with Ospreay pointing at the All In sign. I love it. Get these pay-per-views talking about, get the anticipation built up so we can sell both of those pay-per-views out. And I think it's the first time having a pay-per-view in both markets. So it's a good way to kind of get those ticket sales going early. But yeah, it's going to be interesting what we do with this Christian Cage stuff. Finally, I guess the last main point, Mike Bailey debuts after what felt like years of speculation that he was coming to AEW. He finally makes his AEW official debut. He gets his AEW Mike Bailey is All Elite post on Twitter last night, or on X last night. And I know it's a TV match, and so it's not going to be like the best of the best. But I was impressed by Mike Bailey. I think he has to develop more of his character, because a lot of people, I think, were confused at like what exactly his character was. To be honest, he is like a triple black belt in Taekwondo or something like that. So I think he's just kind of like a Karate Kid character. I think over time they'll develop his gimmick a little bit, and he's really good in the ring. If you want to watch a TNA match, watch Will Ospreay versus Speedball Mike Bailey a year or two ago. They fought at a pay-per-view. I can't remember which one off the top of my head. Probably TNA's best match of that year. Maybe we'll see Will Ospreay and Mike Bailey again at some point in time. But Mike Bailey gets a win over the Beast Mortos. And I just feel bad because the Beast Mortos should be winning every match he's in. But he seems like the fall guy for all these new debuting superstars. Like he gets the loss to all of these people. And I like the Beast Mortos. I think he could be something big. But I feel bad for him because he seems like the guy that has to take all the pins. But your thoughts initially of Mike Bailey and AEW?
Yeah, I'll be 100% honest with you. I think I've only watched 1 or 2 Mike Bailey matches just because I don't watch TNA a whole lot. I was impressed with what he did before, and him coming in to AEW. I'm just interested to see kind of where he's going to fit into everything. I totally forgot the fact that he doesn't wear shoes or wrestling boots. He wears just those kick pads, and he's barefooted. Which last time we saw somebody barefoot was Rusev in WWE, and because of an injury, they quickly made him get into wrestling boots. So hopefully that does not happen with Mike Bailey, and I'm sure he's been doing that for a while. So
keep him away from those platform stages that we use at some of those events. Like he might pull an Adam Cole.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. No, I was impressed with what he could do in the ring. It looks like he could sell really well too, which is good. So it's going to be interesting to see where not only he goes in this tournament, but kind of what happens to him afterwards. And if he gets a little bit lost in a shuffle in the beginning, it's going to happen. But it's just a matter of the placement and where they can let him really come into his own. So yeah, good talent. It's just going to be kind of interesting to see where he's going to be going here in the near future, and then kind of in the long run, in a few months or so, where is he going to fit into it? Is he going to go for a title? Is he just kind of going to stay in the mid-card type of area and just kind of be like a hologram, or some of these type of guys that may show more on Collision to make that show a little bit more interesting and want to make people somewhat tune in to see kind of his moveset and what he can do. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where he falls in the next few weeks and few months. But I think it's a really good addition for AEW to get yet another acrobatic type of in-ring persona, but a very, very different style than I think AEW fans are used to seeing. So that should mesh pretty well with the already type of athleticism that we have in AEW, add yet another layer to that, and just give the fans something a little bit more to look at in the ring.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about, and here's a question in the chat. It says, what's up with all these tournaments? Seems like this just shows there's no long-term plan. This applies to Triple H too, but Khan loves his tournaments. Well, yeah, he does. He loves New Japan, and New Japan runs a tournament about every 2 months. And so that's all it is just that style of wrestling. The tournaments are good ways to kind of, let's just be honest. We're 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks away from Dynasty. It would be hard to find an opponent for Kenny Omega to wrestle and tell a big story in 3 weeks. Because the main goal is to get Kenny Omega versus Okada at All In. So how are we going to push Kenny Omega versus Okada without running a 4-month storyline? Well, let's just have Kenny Omega not have to wrestle in any of these tournaments, but wrestle the winners of all these tournaments, and we just get really good matches out of it. Well, let's talk about this International Championship Eliminator Tournament for Dynasty. So Mike Bailey wins, Orange Cassidy wins. On Saturday, Kazuchika Shibata fights Ricochet, and Mark Briscoe fights Mark Davis. I guess the big question is the winner of all these matches meets in a 4-way next Wednesday. So we have Cassidy and Bailey, Mike Bailey. I guess my question is, are you good with this tournament? And also, who do you think wins the 4-way next week?
Yeah, I'm fine with the tournament. I'll kind of quickly hit off of what you said regarding how, Tony Khan is a fan of New Japan Pro Wrestling. He's a fan of ECW. And ECW kind of did the same thing as well. It's a great way to fill TV for a few weeks for different things. The Owen Hart Cup has been a mainstay tournament in AEW for the last 3 years now.
Right.
So we already knew that was going to happen. It leads to a world title shot, so it's a really good tournament with really good stakes at the end of it. Continental Classic has been one of the best things about AEW in the last 2 years with the way the Continental Classic tournament has ended up. It's actually made World's End something you want to watch because of the way that the Continental Classic tournament ends there. And usually the fall, winter months for wrestling is just not a great time frame before you turn the calendar year and you get preparation for WrestleMania season and kind of now with Revolution being the way that it gets built and the shows it puts on. But AEW, I think, has done a really good job of kind of cementing itself in the winter category of the Continental Classic tournament. So these tournaments, it's a great way to fill TV for a few weeks, but also just something a little bit different to kind of build up your feuds and your storylines. I'm going to go ahead and go on a limb and say that I'm going to say that Ricochet wins his match. And then, so he faces who again? Mark Briscoe?
So the winner of all four
faces...
first-round matches, they fight. They all four winners fight next week in a four-way. So, yeah. So it's Mark Briscoe and Mark Davis as the other first-round match.
Gotcha. So I think we'll probably get... Because if you really want to think about it, you got two faces with Orange Cassidy and Mike Bailey. So you're going to have probably two heels, which would be Davis and Ricochet. And then it's just a matter of who faces Omega at Dynasty.
I have a prediction. I have a prediction for this. And I think you might be on the same page as me. I think Mark Davis wins this tournament because he's part of the Don Callis family. And this continues Kenny Omega's storyline with the Don Callis family. And I think Mark Davis has been this guy that's kind of been struggling to come to the conclusion of if he wants to fully commit to Don Callis and be a true heel. And it would be a good story on, and maybe Mark Davis loses and it leads to him turning on Don Callis' family. I don't know where the story would go from there, but I just think because Omega came back and has immediately started feuding with the Don Callis family, I could see Ricochet winning because Ricochet wants to go for gold. And I mean, Ricochet and Omega would be a great match to watch, but just because of his connection to the Don Callis family, I think Mark Davis wins the whole thing.
So that's my kind of back and forth is I think a heel's going to win no matter what. I think it's either going to be Ricochet or Mark Davis. You have a really good point with the way the continuation of the Don Callis feud with Kenny Omega. If Mark Davis loses, that could start leading towards him turning on the Callis family. But then it's like, where does that go after that? Where does it go for Double or Nothing? It could lead to Omega versus Fletcher for the international title to kind of finish up maybe that storyline in that feud. But you've also got Ricochet, who is from Philadelphia, and that's where Dynasty is. He's going to be on the card in some way, shape, or form, repping his stupid, dumbass Eagles hats. So that wouldn't be a bad spot to put him in, is him against Omega for the international title, and probably be a really, really good match. I don't think you can't run back him and Swerve because Swerve's in a world title match.
It would be really fun if, like, for whatever reason, like, let's say Mike Bailey cost Ricochet the match, and Mike Bailey and Ricochet has a match at Dynasty. We could start that feud there. The only problem is like, where does this leave Orange Cassidy? Like, it's weird because a year ago at this time, Orange Cassidy was in the main event picture, and now he's just kind of like floating around and infiltrating multiple different storylines and conglomerating one week and not conglomerating the other week. So it does kind of feel weird on where this leaves Orange Cassidy. But I think AEW uses tournaments as a way to create new storylines and enhance multiple storylines in the same match. And so the difficulty I have here is if Mark Davis, let's just say he wins, you're right. Where does Ricochet fit in on the card? Where does Mike Bailey fit on the card? You could probably throw him in another match or whatever you want to do with that there. But that Ricochet question is the biggest question, because if Ricochet wins, he fights Omega. That's a big match, and Mark Davis can kind of float around the Don Callis family, can still have that inner beef with Callis, and maybe Fletcher and Mark Davis could have a match. And so I don't know. I think it might. My gut says Mark Davis, but I wouldn't count out Ricochet.
Yeah, I think I would go right now because of the fact that it's in Philadelphia that we're going to give Ricochet a title match. I don't think he's going to win it, so I'm going to go with Ricochet versus Omega. But I'm not against your idea of Davis to kind of continue the Don Callis situation with Omega. That would be like a 1A, 1B for me is Ricochet 1A and Mark Davis 1B. It's like neck and neck, and both make a lot of sense, in my opinion.
Absolutely. We're gonna take some of these chats that are in here. So talking about the tournaments, if the long-term goal is Omega versus Okada, why should I care about anything at Dynasty? That will just mean that person is winning a tournament to lose. Well, they're winning a tournament, and it's a special thing in AEW to win a tournament and to get to Kenny Omega. That's a big match. But I just said it. Tony Khan uses these tournaments as a way to create and expand on multiple different feuds at the same time. And so, we may know coming, ahead of time, which, look, at the moment that it was said, I was kind of pissed off, but I kind of, the thing that was said at the pay-per-view from that actress that, winners know that they're going to win before the match, that was terrible. Camille kind of played PR and kind of said that she didn't mean it that way, that she meant it no matter what you can do, you're going to win in life or something like that. I don't know. It didn't make sense. I just think there was a blunder, and she said that, and it was a bad line. It was a terrible line, and I can't defend it. But let's just be honest. Kayfabe has been dead for 15 years now. We know already that people lose. It's kind of weird to hear it be said on a TV show that what you're watching is fake. But we know who's going to win, and we know it. The idea is Omega versus Okada, but the idea of Mike Bailey versus Omega or Ricochet versus Omega, that's still a big fight feel. And you're still winning a tournament, and they talk about tournament wins all the time as if there's something special in AEW. So winning a tournament is a pretty big deal in AEW. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I totally agree. And if you look at the past history with some of these tournament style things that have happened in AEW, it's led to usually the person that wins the tournament wins the title or wins their whatever they're going after. You look at last year, the Owen Hart Women's Cup was Mariah May. She beat Toni Storm at All in London. Daniel Connolly. Bryan Danielson was the winner of the men's side, won the world title at All in London. 2 years ago, Eddie Kingston won the Continental Classic, became the first Continental champion. These tournaments, not all the time, but for quite a bit, in the Grand Slam tournament they had a couple of years ago to crown the new AEW World Champion. Moxley and Bryan Danielson main evented Grand Slam, and Moxley won. These tournaments, it's not just a given that whoever wins the tournament is going to lose the title match or whatever they're going after. But it's just, like you said, it's something to kind of create either new matchups, some new storylines. And it doesn't always have to revolve into the winner of the tournament that faces off against a champion and loses against a champion, creates a new storyline. There could be a feud within the tournament that, hey, this guy cost me a chance in the tournament. If he gets a shot at a title down the road, I'm going to cost him a shot.
Right.
There's your feud right then and there.
And you look at the feud with Jay White and Christian Cage from, was it the Owen last year? Where Christian eliminated Jay White. They've had a year-long feud, basically, based on, just off of that one moment. But I also, it coincides with TBS and Turner they hold March Madness. So you get wrestling fans kind of intertwined with tournament style stuff. They run a lot of tournaments at this time of year to kind of help promote March Madness. Let's just be honest. It's probably a Warner directive. So, hey, we have this big basketball tournament coming up. We maybe run some of your tournaments around here to kind of get people involved in some tournament style stuff. But no, it's not that. It's a way
to love a lot of tournaments just because it's just
right.
It definitely has that feel of, well, we have no idea what we're going to go. Let's just throw a tournament. So I totally understand that. Like I said, with the Continental Tournament, the Continental Classic, the Owen Hart Cup, those to me are creating more. I don't want to throw around the word prestige, but it's a yearly thing that, especially AEW fans, we're now used to it. We look forward to it because it results in great matchups, and it does create these storylines to go into the bigger shows that have turned out to be pretty good over the last couple of years with the end result of those tournament style formats. Sometimes AEW can definitely get a little too much tournament heavy for sure.
Well, yeah,
but
I think they created it was, and I agree, it was kind of weird because like they had this tournament to set up Omega versus Takeshita at Revolution. I don't understand that tournament. Why does Omega get a free automatic buy? And so yeah, I agree. There's sometimes they just throw a tournament, I think, just because. But I think this Eliminator tournament is great because it's really hard to build a really foundational storyline for a championship in 3 weeks. And with the timing of when Dynasty is, this tournament just helps you build that story really easily. Like, why is Omega fighting whoever? Well, because whoever won this tournament. There doesn't have to be a super deep soap opera-y storyline behind it. The story is X won a tournament. He gets a title match against Omega. And so I agree they can be tournament heavy at times. And having back-to-back tournaments, probably not the best move. But outside of until the Owen, we probably won't get another tournament. And then after the Owen, the next tournament that usually happens is the Continental Classic at the end of the year. So they're a little tournament heavy early in the year this year, but they won't. I don't think they will be super tournament heavy towards the middle and the end of the year.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. Usually we have these tournaments that kind of get into the summer, and then, like I said, usually at the end of the year with Continental Classic, and typically in the middle, you're going to have your Casino Gauntlet Battle Royal or your Casino Gauntlet Ladder Match or something like that. But typically from a tournament style perspective, we usually kind of lean out of those into the summer and early fall months. So, yeah, hopefully after the Owen tournament, we kind of stay away from tournaments until December for the Continental Classic.
Absolutely. Well, hey guys, I appreciate you guys tuning in for the last 70 minutes or so. We started a little late, so our apologies there. But hey, I appreciate you guys for tuning in and listening to this episode of the Beyond the Junkyard podcast. Next week, we have couple big matches on AEW Dynamite. A TBS championship match between Billy Starks and Mercedes Moné. It's all leading to All In when I think we might go title for title with Mercedes Moné. And we'll see how that leads in there. But I'm excited to see Billy Starks finally wrestle on a live TV. She's been one of my favorites in ROH for quite a while. We get the 4-way match. Winner takes on Kenny Omega. And I feel like I'm missing one other big match. Oh, the rematch of the AEW World title match between Cope and Moxley, a street fight. So a lot of action next week on Dynamite. We will go through the highs and lows of Dynamite again next week. And maybe we'll have some hot takes about the world title match again, depending on how good or bad it is. But until next time, guys. Oh, you got one last thing. Let me head over to the co-host here.
Before we get to the ending of my famous saying, we got results.
Oh, yes.
Prediction results. Now, of course, like we said last week, Tony Khan's going to throw together 2 or 3 more matches at the end of the recording on Thursday, and we will usually don't get to those. So there were 3 more pre-show matches that we did not predict, so we're not going to factor into those since we did not predict those.
Technically 2 because 1 got thrown out, but yeah.
Oh, correct. Yes. So either way, we only had 1 pre-show match that was as of the recording last week, and we predicted that as well as the full card for Revolution. You, my friend, went 6-4, so over 500. Not a bad way to start off the year. I'm very upset for the fact that I didn't go perfect. I went 9-1. Should have went 10-0, but
it's just like last year, all over again.
Listen, I'm telling you, there's just something about what pisses me off is the fact that Sean Ross Sapp plugged away about that online betting thing that you can bet on Revolution. And if I had chosen everybody on my list, well, first of all, I would have had to win all 10 bets. But if I had won all 10 bets, I would have won $157. I didn't do it because I didn't think I was going to win. And I'm glad I didn't because I would have done the all 10 and I would have chosen Fletcher over Ospreay and I would have lost me all my money and I would have been even more pissed. So I'm glad I didn't do that. But yeah, I was still shocked at the fact that we spent like a 10-minute segment on the show about the fact of what's going to happen with the world title. And we seemed both really confident Christian was going to cash in or Cope was going to win. And then at the very end, I was just like, you know what? Moxley's going to win. I don't know how, but Moxley's going to win. I'll be damned, it actually happened. But yeah, so there's your predictions for so far for 2025.
Look, I'll catch up at Forbidden Door because that's apparently the pay-per-view that I'm good at. But
yeah, that's the one I'm just like, I have no idea. I don't know who's going to win. I'm just throwing darts on a wall and hoping it sticks and usually catch up there. And then if I get cocky enough, like I did at World's End last year, I just kind of was like, yeah, that's going to win. And I had my worst record. It was like 7-4 and you were like 8-2 or something like that. And closed the gap a little bit, but also a good start.
Off to a good start. Well, in a couple of weeks, we'll be doing Dynasty predictions, so stay tuned for that. But thank you guys for tuning in for this episode of Beyond the Junkyard, and we'll bring it back to the man that stirs the sauce, and he lets it marinate on the show made for the sickos, and in the words with your favorite phrase.
Listen, Ty, it was a little frustrating with the internet access, but you know what? It soured the sauce a little bit, but at the end of the day, we still made the best out of the ingredients that we were dealt with. So, hey, for all my friends and all of our friends that are anywhere in the Southeast, be careful this weekend. There's going to be some naders out. So either chase them or don't die. Either way, good luck. You may need to get some sauce to last you for a couple of days if you have no power. So, with all that being said, friends, we will see you all next week. Definitely pay attention to the sponsors. Help us out with the show. But as always, stay saucy.
Beyond